From stabbing a lone female hiker while still on parole, to the sad story of a 19-year-old university student murdered by a maintenance worker who couldn't withstand his advances being rejected. Here are some of the most disturbing cases. We're starting off with the case of Hannah Cornelius, a Stellenbosch University student who was murdered by a gang of 4. The murder of Hannah Cornelius is a disturbing and gruesome case due to the physical and psychological abuse Hannah suffered at the hands of her attackers before succumbing to her injuries. Hannah Cornelius and her friend Chesson Marsh thought they were about to end their fun night out on a high note, but after their ordeal at the hands of a gang, only one of the two would live to see the next day. Hannah Cornelius was a bright and promising young woman full of dreams and aspirations, except that a gang of thieves would not only put an end to those dreams, but carry them out in the most ruthless way possible. Hannah was born on February 12, 1996 in South Africa. Her father, William, was a magistrate, while her mother, Anna, was a practicing lawyer. In 2015, Hannah began her bachelor's degree at Stellenbosch University. Hannah was brilliant and took her studies seriously. Even though she resided close to the university, Hannah needed a car to take her to classes. As a result, Hannah's 90-year-old grandmother gifted the 21-year-old her blue and white Volkswagen car. Outside of school, Hannah volunteered at the Tier Animal Sanctuary in Cape Town, a non-profit organization that provides a safe sanctuary for abused, abandoned, and neglected animals. During her second year at the university, Hannah met Chesson Marsh, a theology student. The two connected and got along very quickly. Chesson was hardworking and shared some hobbies with Hannah, which made them get along. They helped each other through classes and often chilled together during their free time. Interestingly, the two never had a romantic relationship. On Friday, May 26, 2017, Hannah and Chesson decided to end their week by blowing off some steam at a bar. After a week of studying and working hard, they decided to hang out with some friends for a Friday evening drink. The night went smoothly, and everyone enjoyed their time out. It was already in the early hours of Saturday, May 27th, and the gathering was slowly coming to an end. Chesson knew the streets of Stellenbosch were not too safe for women, especially at that time of day, so he offered to walk Hannah back to her residence. Moreover, it wasn't far from his apartment. The two arrived at Hannah's residence with no issue, but when Chesson was about to leave for his home, Hannah got worried that it wasn't safe for him either. So, instead of Chesson riding his skateboard back home, Hannah insisted on driving him home in her Volkswagen City Golf. She felt that even though she would be driving home alone, she would be in her car, which would be safer than leaving Chesson to walk home alone. Chesson hopped into Hannah's car, and they drove to his residence. At around 3:23 a.m. on May 27, Hannah parked her car in the parking lot, and the two sat outside chatting. They had just finished saying their goodbyes, but little did they know that while they were talking, 4 men from a nearby township were closing in on them. The group was meticulous and used a nearby truck as cover so they wouldn't see them coming. Out of nowhere, 4 men pounced on the unsuspecting friends and forcefully opened the driver's side door where Hannah was sitting. One assailant pointed a screwdriver into Hannah's face to threaten her. At the same time, another assailant got into the back seat where Chesson was and threatened him with a knife. Once they knew Hannah and Chesson were no longer a threat, they began stealing their money and belongings. Julius Nashville, one of the 4 men, grabbed Chesson's cell phone and wallet before leaving the scene. His job was done, and the fate of Hannah and Chesson was in the hands of the other 3 assailants. Hannah begged the assailants to take all she had and all Chesson had, including her car, hoping this way they would get to see the next day unharmed. But the assailants had other plans. One of the assailants forced himself into the back seat with Chesson, while the other 2 pressed Hannah between them in the front seat. As they drove away for about an hour, the movement of the car was unknown, but at exactly 4:34 a.m., a CCTV camera spotted the car at a petrol station located just outside Stellenbosch. The assailants had pulled over to force Chesson into the car boot. They took everything he had, including his jacket and shoes, before locking the car boot. One of the assailants, Vernon Whitboy, could be seen entering the shop with Chesson's wallet and bank card. They had already forced the pin out of Chesson's mouth and hoped to wipe off his account. However, it appeared that Chesson was not as dumb as they thought. After multiple unsuccessful attempts to access his bank account, the assailants got angry and left the shop. Apparently, Chesson had fooled them by giving them the wrong pin, a decision he would pay greatly for. At around 6 a.m., the men stopped the car outside of Centene. They told Hannah they needed to grab a smoke and would continue the trip. They also assured her that they would return her car once they got to their destination. Afterwards, the two men exited the car, leaving one of their colleagues to look after Hannah and move towards the car trunk. They forced Chesson to get out of the car and walk into a nearby bush. It was at this point it became clear that they didn't stop the car for a smoke break, but to teach Chesson a lesson for giving them the wrong pin earlier. Chesson was lying flat on the ground with two men beating him. He knew at that moment that the men were mad at him, and he was going to die. The last thing he saw was two men with bricks in their hands, and then, all of a sudden, everything went blank. The two assailants, confident that they had killed Chesson, returned to the vehicle and drove away. Even though the men had promised Hannah earlier that they would let her go once they reached their destination, they didn't live up to their promises. The gang drove Hannah to an unused paintball site, where the three men took turns doing unspeakable things to the poor college student. As if that was not enough, they drove Hannah to a vineyard, where they stabbed her in the neck with a screwdriver. The final straw was a 40-kilogram rock they crushed her head with. She died instantly on impact. The next day, a young South African couple in Bernardino Heights heard Chesson's cries in their front yard. At first, they thought it was just another drunk intruder causing a scene. However, when Arl Foran and his wife came out to investigate where the noise was coming from, they found Chesson drenched in blood. At first, the young couple didn't want to help Chesson, as they saw him as a thug who just got injured in a fight. But Chesson pleaded his case and begged the duo for help. It was not until the cops arrived that they realized that Chesson was truly a victim of carjacking. Within minutes, Chesson was pleading with the local police to help find Hannah. He described the assailants' faces, the car they drove, and anything else he could remember from the night before. Chesson desperately wanted to help, but tragically, it was already too late. Just 2 hours earlier, while Chesson was still unconscious, Hannah had been found. She was confirmed dead. The news devastated Hannah's friends and family, turning their lives upside down. The police began a relentless search for Chesson and Hannah's attackers. They knew they were looking for a small blue and white Volkswagen. Fortunately, their search wouldn't take long, as the car had already been spotted earlier that morning. At around 1:12 p.m., the assailants, after killing Hannah, chased a woman as she walked to work in Centene and stole her bag as well as her phone. They kidnapped the victim and withdrew 3,000 rand, 1,161 euros, from her account while she was in the back of the car before dropping her off where Hannah's body was found. At around 2:10 p.m., Geraldo Parsons and Vernon Whitboy were spotted by undercover police officers. The assailants led them on a high-speed pursuit. Later on, several other police vehicles joined the high-speed chase that ended on the road to a farm. Parsons and Whitboy decided to ditch the car and escape on foot, but were arrested. Even Van Niekerk, the third culprit, was arrested. Once the three assailants were in custody, the cops went after Nashville Julius for his role in the events. A few months after the crime, students at Stellenbosch University, where Hannah had studied, staged protests and marches demanding more security on campus. Their calls for action echoed the community's grief and desire for change in the wake of their daughter's tragic death. Hannah's parents channeled their sorrow into something positive. They established a foundation named after her, dedicated to providing support and advice to the poorest communities. The foundation's mission is to offer hope and assistance to those in need, ensuring that Hannah's legacy lives on through acts of kindness and support. In November 2018, Geraldo Parsons, Vernon Whiteau, and Evan Van Niekerk were found guilty of Hannah Cornelius's murder, as well as kidnapping, robbery, and the attempted murder of her friend Chesson. All three career criminals received 2 life sentences each for her murder. Whiteau and Parsons faced additional sentences: 25 years for attempted murder, 15 years each for 4 counts of robbery, and 10 years for kidnapping. Evan Van Niekerk was sentenced to 20 years behind bars for attempted murder, 20 years for robbery, 10 years for kidnapping Hannah and Chesson, and 8 years for kidnapping another woman. In October, Nashville Julius was not spared either. He was sentenced to 15 years for 2 counts of robbery and 7 years for kidnapping. Even though justice was served, the families of Hannah Cornelius never remained the same due to the incident. In March 2018, less than a year after Hannah's demise, Hannah's mother, Anna Cornelius, was found floating in the waters of the South Atlantic Ocean. Although the incident was deemed an accident, Hannah's father maintained that his wife had given up on her life, as she couldn't bear the pain of losing Hannah. The father, William Cornelius, was diagnosed with cancer just 3 months after Hannah's tragic end. In 2022, he succumbed to his injuries. Hannah's story highlights how saving someone would ruin lives. Even though the perpetrators would be behind bars for life, the unsolved murder of Lauren Hiyiki remains one of the most disturbing cases that have happened in the past few years due to the circumstances surrounding her death. Lauren High, a beautiful and happy woman who worked as an esthetician in Arizona, was alone hiking on a beautiful Saturday morning when tragedy struck. The 29-year-old was stabbed over a dozen times, and her killer has not been brought to justice, even after a year. Lauren High was born on November 20th, 1993, in Seattle, Washington. Lauren was born into a well-to-do family. Her father, Jeff, owned a plumbing manufacturing company and heating business called Sound Mechanical. On the other hand, Lauren's mother, Lena, was into real estate. Family and friends described Lauren as a beautiful lady who was not only beautiful outside, but on the inside too. She was always a happy soul who loved everyone that ever came her way. She was an active outdoor enthusiast and regularly went hiking. In 2020, she enrolled in aesthetic school at Arizona State University and later started working as a skincare professional in Scottsdale. But unfortunately, her life was about to end in one of the most bizarre and tragic ways imaginable. On the morning of November 8, 2022, Lauren went on a hiking trip alone. But by 4:20 p.m., after a full day of hiking, she never returned home. Worry began to set in among her friends, and they tried to contact her. One of Lauren's friends eventually checked her social media feed, and when they realized she hadn't posted any pictures of herself hiking that day, they grew even more concerned. After Lauren's failure to arrive home, her friends immediately informed the police, and her family began searching for her whereabouts. Hours later, after the police had begun an active search and rescue mission for the woman, they found her. She was found dead near the edge of a popular hiking spot. The only signs of a struggle were stab wounds to her body. Lauren had been attacked by an assailant. The crime was premeditated, and the assailant knew exactly what they were doing. It was reported that Lauren's murderer repeatedly stabbed her after approaching from behind, on a trail near the 6,500 blocks of East Libby Street, located in the northern Phoenix area. It was not far from Lauren's apartment. The route passed through a beautiful trail that was always calm, quiet, and less populated. This made the route the best place to go if you needed to take a walk, enjoy nature, and get distracted by fewer people. On the other hand, it also made the place a perfect location to commit a crime and easily get away with it, since it was a deserted area. A surveillance camera showed Lauren leaving her home at around 10:30 a.m. Another CCTV camera captured her around 10:52 a.m., calmly walking along the trail in the park. The 29-year-old was wearing a pink sports top, black leggings, and a pair of sneakers. This was the last time anyone saw Lauren High alive. At 11:30 a.m., Lauren did not show up at work without informing her colleagues in advance. This was so unlike her, and they suspected something was wrong. Lauren's colleagues tried her number several times, but it kept saying it was switched off. This heightened their fear, and they began calling around, hoping someone knew her whereabouts. However, all they got was that she left home around 10 a.m. and had yet to return. At around 1 p.m., Lauren's worried parents, who had been trying to reach her, arrived at her home, hoping she was incommunicado because she was not feeling fine. Upon getting to her house, they did not meet her at home. They also observed that her doors were locked and there were no signs of forced entry. Suspecting this was unusual and something must have gone wrong, Lauren's relatives immediately filed a missing person report with the police. The law enforcement swung into action immediately and began searching. But the results were not impressive. They combed every nook and cranny of the bush, hoping they could find at least something linking them to the missing 29-year-old. However, all their efforts were futile. On April 29th, the next day after Lauren went missing, the police received a call that would give them their first breakthrough in the missing person case. The call was from a woman walking her dog along the trail. The caller informed the cops that she had just found an injured woman on the trail. Apparently, her dog had likely picked up the scent and led the dog walker to the body. The woman also recognized the injured woman as someone who lived nearby and frequented the trail. The law enforcement rushed to the scene and were met with a chilling sight of Lauren's lifeless body, covered with multiple stab wounds. Her clothes were torn, and blood was everywhere. Forensic experts soon arrived at the scene, and Lauren's body was taken away for an autopsy. On May 1st, it was officially confirmed that the body discovered belonged to an Arizona resident, Lauren Hiyiki. The forensic medical examiner also gave more details about what possibly led to the event. According to their estimation, the death occurred on April 28th at about 11 a.m. The cause of death was blood loss, which was inflicted by likely a pocket knife. It also showed that she was stabbed 15 times after being chased on the Reach 11 Trail, west of Scottsdale Road on Mayo Boulevard. They also found defensive wounds on her hands and arms, meaning Lauren fought her attacker and escaped, but her injuries were too fatal for her to have survived. The place was a deserted area, and while she could have cried for help, no one would have been around to hear her. Things could have changed if she had been found earlier, not 24 hours after the incident. There were also no traces of sexual assault while searching the crime scene. To understand how the murder possibly happened, the investigators discovered that Lauren's belongings were scattered along the running path, which led to a barbed wire fence. Interestingly, Lauren's body was found close to the barbed wire fence. Recall that Lauren's clothes were torn and she had some defensive wounds. It probably meant that Lauren tried to get over the barbed wire fence. The next course of action for the investigators was to search all CCTV cameras around to see if any could point them on the right path. They knew at this point she was attacked, but had no clue about the suspect. Eventually, they found a CCTV camera that captured the victim enjoying nature as she walked along the path until she was out of view. This was around 10:52 a.m. They later observed a man sprinting in the same direction Lauren was walking. In another video, this unknown man was seen running in the opposite direction, trying to climb over the barbed wire fence. This gave the investigators the idea that the unknown man could be Lauren's attacker. However, the CCTV was not clear enough, but they could deduce he was an African American, and there was something fishy about him. In one of the recordings, the man quickly ran past a CCTV camera as if he didn't want his face to show. Moreover, Lauren's murder took place within the time frame of the unknown man's appearance on the CCTV cameras. Lauren's parents couldn't identify the man jogging in the CCTV footage. As a result, the Phoenix Police Department released the pictures of the suspect, hoping someone would help identify him, offering a reward of up to $2,000. While the authorities waited for someone to identify the suspect, the forensic analysts continued to work with the physical evidence. Eventually, they got a breakthrough. A shoe that had fallen off Lauren's foot during the event was checked for DNA, and they got a match in their database. The partial DNA print found in Lauren's shoe led the police to a man called Zion William Teasley. The first thing the authorities did was compare the picture of their new suspect, Teasley, to the picture obtained from the CCTV footage. They discovered that they had the same build and height, and they looked alike. But the video footage was not clear enough, and that was not enough evidence. So they managed to get Teasley's phone data, which placed him at the crime scene the day of the murder. In fact, his location history showed that he took the specific route where the CCTV camera showed a man sprinting in the same direction as Lauren. Zion Teasley was a 22-year-old African-American who'd been on the wrong side of the law several times. Teasley faced a series of legal troubles after his arrest in 2020, which led to a significant plea deal in 2021, following a string of incidents. He took a plea that saw 10 of his 13 felony charges dropped in exchange for his plea. Teasley was sentenced to 4 years of probation before his release in November 2022. He served 16 months in an Eloy prison. Additionally, he had already spent a year in jail while awaiting sentencing. However, one would expect Teasley to come out as a reformed man, but it was otherwise. The 22-year-old was on probation at the time of the murder. At this point, the cops had enough evidence they could work with. They already had partial DNA. Teasley's phone data placed him at the crime scene at the time, and he had an impressive history with law enforcement. However, they wanted more. So they decided to visit the sportswear store Teasley worked at to ask the people who worked with him to confirm if he was the one in the CCTV. They discovered that Teasley was recently fired for being aggressive towards female employees. They also added that he was suspected of stealing when his ex-coworkers saw the video. They observed that he was wearing the same clothing he was accused of stealing that morning. They also added that Teasley was always with a 3-inch pocket knife, corroborating forensic speculation that Lauren's attacker used a 3-inch pocket knife. It was clear as crystal that Teasley committed the murder, but the motive was not entirely clear. On May 3rd, 5 days after the murder, Teasley linked up with his probation officer, who observed that the headphones Teasley had were similar to the ones the suspect was wearing in the surveillance video. While the probation officer couldn't 100% confirm from the footage that the suspect in the video was Teasley, he was sure that they had the same build. On May 4th, Teasley was arrested around 6:30 p.m. Thursday at the Catherine Townhomes near Scottsdale and Bell Roads, where he lived with his mother, less than a mile from the trail where his body was found. The police obtained a search warrant and broke into Teasley's house. They found in his apartment a bucket of chlorine, gloves, and rags. Apparently, it looked like the suspect was trying to destroy all the evidence, but he ran out of luck as he didn't have enough time to clean it all. When they got to his room, they found a suitcase stocked with clothes, a brand new passport under a fake name, and a bus ticket to Canada, suggesting that Teasley was probably considering fleeing the country. In May 2023, Teasley appeared before the court in Maricopa County, where the judge informed him there was probable cause to hold him for first-degree murder, as well as violating probation. He didn't speak throughout the court process except when he confirmed his name. The prosecutor argued that he was a flight risk since he already had plane tickets, so his bail was set at $1 million. and he was booked into Maricopa County Jail on charges of first-degree murder. On May 21, 2023, a nationwide hike was organized in memory of the slain Lauren Hiiki. A lot of hikers turned up for the awareness walk, and the movement saw over 300 hikers,